Well, we're continuing with Brian King, and we're continuing on probably arguably the most important part of business, which is money, right?
Yeah, that's why you do business. That's
without
right.
it, I mean, it's pretty tough to operate and continue to move your business forward. And there's so many different ways to get money, but I know I've gone to family before. I've gone to friends before. Have you dealt with those situations on behalf of a client? And is it true that you should never, mix family and money, or can it work out?
Well, it can sometimes, but it's not usually what I would suggest, because you've got to see that person when you go to Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of that. So they're looking over at you like, well, how are you doing with the business? It's like, where's that return? And so it can be uncomfortable. But it has worked out where people have made money for their families, done really well, and and it works out well. But it can be in the form of a loan from a family member, or you could give them an equity stake in the company. But even though some people are supposed to be sort of like limited partners or silent partners, that silent is not always, they're not always as silent as you may want them to be. So
they're silent if you paid them money.
right.
They're silent.
Yeah.
But I could see the pitfalls for sure in trying to raise the money. And you mentioned sometimes it's kind of a loan. I mean, has Uncle John asked for a promissory note from Jimmy if he loans money?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend it, because that way the agreement is in writing, and I think it's good for both parties, really.
Okay.
And if it's over $10,000, it really needs to be in writing for tax purposes anyway.
I see.
And there does need to be an interest rate of at least the minimum applicable. They call it the AFR, applicable federal rate.
Is that over the prime?
It's actually pretty low usually, and it's between related parties, so like a family member or so the IRS requires you to charge some interest at that level, and but it's good for that, and it's good for the parties. Just know what the agreement is, know when the payment is going to be due. If it's monthly payments, what date they're due. Is there a late fee if you don't pay in time? That sort of thing, maybe the person investing into the company, maybe you want to have advances in your language where they can loan additional sums if you need it. Maybe there's a certain, it's not quite a line of credit, but it's, you can go to them and say, hey, and I'd like to get some more money on these same terms that we've already agreed upon. And sometimes that they will do that.
We're continuing with Brian King, and he's online at businessattorneylaw.com, helping clients with business transactions really in both Georgia as well as South Carolina. So there's the family route. Do some folks just run up the credit card? Have you heard that too?
There's been a lot of business owners who've started business with credit cards. Sometimes, you've probably seen these 0% offers for 6 months or a year sometimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's money that's available that you could use for that, and you just got to make sure you pay that off at the end of that time. Because I mean, otherwise you're going to be looking at 20% interest or so. You definitely don't want to carry that rate of interest. But between then and the time when it's to pay it off, you could get a bank loan to sort of refinance that debt at a much lower interest rate, because after say 3 to 6 months, you've got some return, you've got some business to show the bank, to maybe where they will loan you the money.
Now, you've been an attorney for 20 years. These are kind of unprecedented times. Have you noticed that banks are more willing the last couple of years because of COVID, or less willing?
It kind of depends. I mean, I would say, with say SBA loans, the SBA will back up to 50% of the loan for the bank. Okay. So in those instances, I would say banks are pretty willing to, as long as there's a good business plan and there's assets. Largely banks are looking for assets,
collateral.
Collateral, right? If they have to foreclose on that loan, they've got something to go after and to show for that. So whether it's a building, a lot of business owners have to put up their house as collateral,
Wow.
like a second mortgage.
Sure.
Or if, they have any other assets,
Own
or
a
like
car even.
retirement accounts and such like that, and some
Wow.
people do borrow from their 401k
Sure.
to put into their business.
Yeah.
So there's lots of options, and, you just want to make sure you're not paying too much interest, and you've got a good plan for paying that back.
Okay, sure. It makes perfect sense. We're continuing with Brian King and looking at different ways to kind of raise money for the business. Have there been more private loans that you've noticed maybe as well over time?
I don't know if it's been more, but there are a lot of those, and with the whole say .com, back in the early, say, I guess late 1990s,
Right.
and then in the 2000s and all, and then you saw you had the .com bust.
That's right.
And then you had the real estate bust in 2008, and also there's some ebb and flow when it comes to business cycles, and a lot of people think, well, I'm gonna try to raise this money, and I'm gonna sell equity. I'm gonna sell shares in my company, and and there's all these crowdfunding ideas, where people just say, okay, well, hey, I want some money, and they do a little video and they put it on these crowdfunding sites, and
That's
people
right.
just give them money or whatever.
I hadn't thought of that.
And
Yeah.
and that's an interesting idea, but I'm not giving my money to some idea unless there's some return, that I'm looking at. So
Sure.
and so I've done, private offerings for my clients where they've, sold shares in their company to raise funds and all, and that's worked out fine. And a lot of times it's people knowing other people with money who are looking to invest. And if you know those types of people, it's much easier to raise funds versus just sort of a general solicitation out there,
Right.
But you can go about it in that manner if you want, and I can set things up to do it that way. You just have to comply with the securities laws, both the federal and the state, and the documents are pretty thick.
Sure.
That you have to disclose everything that you can think of as what could go wrong, because you are making representations to these potential investors about what your company is going to do to be able to pay them back, and what assets it has currently, and all of that.
And lastly, before we head out, we live in a Shark Tank society,
Right,
and I've heard of these angel investors. For those who don't know, how would you define who an angel investor is, and is it much different from just a private person lending money?
It's different in the sense that some of the angel investors are almost like professional investors. They're looking for deals that they can invest in, and so that's the biggest difference. I mean, they're sophisticated investors, unlike say going to Uncle Bob and saying, "Hey, will you let me have some money to put in my business?" So they're usually looking at. I've been to some angel investment presentations and stuff just to kind of get a better feel for what they're doing and what they're looking for, and the person who's looking for the investment, they'll do a presentation like a Shark Tank presentation.
That'd be fun.
And they'll it's very similar to that, and they'll get posed with questions about their business, and and some of them do walk away with an investment, and of course it's subject to drafting the documents. They'll have attorneys draft the documents, but yeah, it's definitely a way of doing it, because those are the type people that you're looking to get money from. They have the money, they're looking for an investment. If you've got a great idea, it's a good shot to do it.
Would they provide more than just money as well?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes, just like the sharks talk about how they bring to the table all this experience that they have, and they do. Some of those
Fubu. Was that Damien?
Damien. Yeah, he. Sometimes the angel investors do want to kind of take an active role in it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just want to be that silent partner that sits back and gets the return. So
And was this in Augusta that you went to the meeting?
the one that I actually went to that was really good was in Greenville, but I did go to an event at AU one time where they had sort of a Shark Tank presentation where some investors here, or so they kind of got on this panel and they would ask them questions, and the companies would present.
Yeah,
So,
it might be good to Google angel investors of Georgia and South Carolina. One way is look if you're looking for money. Of course, there's family, private loans, there's credit card, crowdfund sourcing, banks, SBAs, but get some guidance if you can from an attorney like Brian King as you move forward and prevent some mistakes for sure. Start by going online to businessattorneylaw.com. Brian, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.